What is Starfinder role-playing game really good at? What are its strong suits? Where is its center of gravity? Using it out of the box and consulting third-party material to a minimum, what does this game tell you about how it wants to be played and what it is? I'm the Complex Games apologist, and I've given this some thought. As you know, I covered the game a great deal leading up to its release, and I've had a look at it afterwards and sort of listened to where people are having success and where people are having difficulty putting it to use. And I hope you'll join me for this video, where I reflect on sort of what this game's personality is. So, let's take a look inside. One of the things about Starfinder leading up to its release that James Sutter and Owen K.C. Stevens really tried to put to us was the challenge that they were working on when it came to a money economy, when it came to how characters were going to relate to their gear, and that gear choices would matter in this game system. Now, as it's a leveling system, for gear choices to matter, that means that the gear that you carry around at level 1 has to be different in some fashion from the gear at level 6 or level 10. And it also means that maybe we want you to pick up gear and use the gear that you find. And especially, the gear that you already have around will need to be sold, but not for so much that you can kind of just buy the next appropriate piece without adventuring, without being excited to find something that might be just outside of your playstyle. If you're using 2 pistols and you find a shotgun that is really excellent, would you use it? That's the sort of pressure that this game is exerting on the player. And that's good for a particular kind of gaming. First of all, kind of the classic zero to hero kind of play. Something which resembles the default mode of play in Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. Acquisitive and quest-minded adventurers going out to make their fortunes and perhaps helping some folks along the way. But ultimately, their abilities and their opponents are advancing pretty quickly, and they need to consult how well equipped they are for these dangers. Now, what does that really mean? It's easy to see that in a negative light, to think of that as power gaming or munchkinism. But I would put to you that I think really it resembles something of what we see in the computer game, which is a first-person shooter called Borderlands. It really works well in a game with a lot of progression, and a game where gear is perhaps scarce because it's a post-apocalyptic setting. One of the things about the Pact World setting that I think is missed easily is that in some respects it is post-apocalyptic. Galarian as a planet and its billions of people have suddenly vanished. And so with it, that also suggests that the economy has really, really contracted, and there's a shock going on. There may only be one expert in ancient Aslant archaeology aboard Absalom Station. There are, after all, only a few million people on Absalom Station. Here in the United States where I live, there are more than 350 million people. There are more than 8 billion people here on Earth, or thereabouts. So consider for a moment that even though there's at least the entire star system of the Pact Worlds and beyond, what you're looking at is something which has really had to readjust to a much more intimate economy. And that also means that there's room for the player characters to be needed. There's room in that giant hustle and bustle for them to not disappear into sort of a Blade Runner type of milieu where they're insignificant. And, struggling with insignificance can be a great subject for a role-playing game in the right context, but perhaps not in the D20 3.x OGL context. So, what do I mean to say by all this? Well, for one, the setting and the calibration around how gear is set up in Starfinder, and especially when it comes to how much money you start with and how much gear sells for, is really meant for you to be out there picking up gear off of your opponents or seizing opportunities to get gear as rewards and then using it as opposed to banking it. This is much closer to classic D&D play, like pre 5th edition. Now, gear is really receding into the background in 5th edition play. And, some people in my local groups, in my discussion groups in the internet, have remarked that 5th edition is moving towards a supers kind of gameplay, where what's on your character sheet kind of advances automatically and doesn't necessarily rely on anything in the world, equipment included. So characters need to think more carefully about, where their next meal or their next kind of prime cannon attached to their hand will come from. This is a style play that can keep folks engaged if you have people in your group that, may struggle to follow along with story elements, but are always deeply involved in the narrative of how their character is progressing. And the two can mutually support each other. This is also a place where I think that Starfinder shines because there's a really big well of content available for adventures that work in a similar vein. After all, the vast library of adventure paths is a place where characters are looking for and picking up gear. And I think that, with a little bit of swaps in an adventure like this, which is about the player characters waking up at first level in an insane asylum that has gone amok with mythos creatures, and they have amnesia at the same time, this is a particularly good, I think, module that could be translated into Starfinder. If you're looking to kind of slowly migrate your genre away from fantasy gaming, or if you're looking to get back into some of the classic kind of gameplay modes of acquisitive zero-to-hero gameplay, but maybe not in the same fantasy milieu, I think that there's a lot of assets here right there ready to go. I think that the promise and the excitement around Starfinder as a universal system, I think, is misplaced, however. I will say that. There are lots of people in Starfinder groups that I have been part of that are very excited to kind of pick up different anime, pick up different film properties, different science fiction things, and try and work them into Starfinder. I think that, unfortunately, the system is designed particularly to make these things about gear work well. And it's also designed so that the Starship module, which, while robust and while providing some interesting gameplay choices for each player, is also not in consultation all that much with the rest of the character design. It's skill check based, and you won't find a lot of class features, especially that relate to starships. And that's particularly because they didn't want to hang their hat on a pilot character and an engineer character. They wanted folks to be thinking more about kind of the tactical gameplay picture and just about the identity of their character in the world and how that empowered them, rather than their role aboard a ship. Do too much of that and you move towards military sci-fi, which I'm enjoying a great deal of in the subgenre of Star Trek right now. So yes, I am saying right now that I think there's a great deal of effort being made to adapt Starfinder, also because it's OGL and there's no licensing fee, but also that effort is being applied to adapting it towards things that I think are not really at the center of gravity of what you get for free in the OGL. They're not at the center of gravity of the amazing art that you get for an incredibly low price in the core rulebook. What we see in the core rulebook is a fusion of Warhammer 40,000 with kind of Sword and Planet John Carter type play. It's very focused on a single star system and on the relationship between the planets. And while there is a star drive that's sort of written there into the menu, it's pretty remote, including from the adventure path. And the adventure path doesn't actually go interstellar until book 4, which I'm not sure if it's out yet or it may be just releasing now. With that in mind, Starfinder has a personality. Starfinder is exciting to me. I think that Starfinder Organized Play, however, is not a place where I'm going to apply my efforts like I thought I might have. And that's particularly because it's not really as much of an open door and sort of walk up and meet people kind of a venue as much as it is organized play for, devoted people who are in the hobby. I really like evangelizing role-playing games to brand new people. And the structure, the amount of structure that's imposed, registering your character and submitting log sheets and so on the website, I think is maybe asking a little bit much in terms of homework for, new people. So I think that when I relate to Starfinder, it's probably going to be in the context of perhaps running a one-shot or a three-shot with some local guys that I know kind of play D&D a lot, but I haven't really played with them too much because they're in a classic D&D mode that, is not really my focus right now as a gamer. But I'd like it if we got to know each other and I know which among them might be great people to invite to some of my games. And I think that we could have fun together with the right game in the moment. And I think that Starfinder might be just that. And also, it's just a place to stretch your genre horizons. But I just want to point to and say that the genre horizon, the particular genre of Starfinder, is something a little bit different than what most people are saying it is. It's not just science fiction. It's not really just science fantasy. It's a particular kind of science fantasy where the economy is small and where, what you find from your adventures can be very valuable to you. And as far as starships go, they're there, and they can be exciting, but they're not central in the same way that they are in Star Trek. And the system's not deeply invested in starships, for better or for worse. But that means that there's maybe not so much depth. I have heard some talk about how the gameplay with starships is repetitive. So, where is the fun and non-repetitive part of Starfinder? Well, it's in the giant, vast array of different combinations of characters that you could make. It's in the amazing amount of fun you could have exploring a ring world or an orbital, sort of like what we see in the Halo games, and trying to find the ancient progenitors or to find the command center that operates one of these megastructures, and that could occupy an entire campaign. That's some fun things to think about. And I think that Starfinder really prompts that. And as far as, how it can really hold your attention, how it can be heroic, I say look no further than The Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Look for that science fantasy or sword and planet feeling. Look to Stargard by Andre Norton. These are larger-than-life, sort of fun, plucky adventures that aren't really hanging their hat on the science or on a really fine conception of genre, but instead are having fun in the moment. And if you have a lot of proficiency in 3.x gaming, Starfinder is really a place to go. If you remember having a lot of proficiency in 3.x gaming, I think Starfinder is presented in a way that will be very easy for you to kind of get a handle on and play with. And ultimately, the price is also right. It's a low price. And after all, everything that you've got in terms of 5-foot grids is ready to go. The miniatures situation is not great right now, but I think it will improve over time. I think Reaper will come out with some sort of sci-fi line. And in the meantime, there's a new game on the block that has given people pause to think about whether fantasy is the only thing or just one thing among many. And that's a good thing. And I think it creates a little bit of buzz. So I'm hoping to talk more about Starfinder over the course of the year and see how it's maturing. I want to get out to the game store and start attending some game nights and hopefully play some Starfinder Society and kind of get a handle on what sort of people are interested in it and what the culture of play is like. Because one thing on my mind lately has been on how much culture of play is important to what a game really is. How do the people that you play a game with shape what the game is? With your local group, the game will basically be however your local group plays, if you have a sit-down group. But otherwise, there's patterns of force out there that sort of teach a lot about what a game is. So, I want to find out how people are playing Starfinder, and having fun with it. For me, I want to explore, being really reckless, really intense, guns blazing gameplay, like we see in Borderlands. That's what I want to do. I won't lie. And I think I'm going to have fun doing it. I think it's a game that I want to play more than I want to GM. I'm just saying. So, with that in mind, maybe I'll have some cool character build videos on the channel in the coming year. For now, I hope you have a happy holidays and wish you a happy new year. I'm the Complex Games Apologist.